people have found things that were never supposed to exist. Beneath the permafrost, where time should stand still and every trace of the past should have vanished, something remains, waiting. Siberia is not just a frozen wasteland. It is a land where history has been pushed beyond the borders of memory. A place so white it looks bleached clean. But what's been erased doesn't always disappear. It just lies still, waiting for someone brave enough to dig deeper. There is no light, no sound, only the sharp crack of ice beneath your feet, and the creeping sense that something is not right. These are lands too vast to be watched, forests too silent to feel natural, and traces far too ancient to belong to humankind. Some call it isolation, but in that silence, something buried keeps whispering. No one knows what it is. Only that every time the ice melts, another fragment of memory surfaces, not a memory of humanity, but perhaps of something that came before us. Tonight, we're not just looking at a map, we're staring into the fractures in truth. The empty spaces history has chosen to ignore. Because some questions cannot be answered by science. And some places, like Siberia, hold answers no one dares to speak. You're listening to Bedtime History, and this is where silence begins to tell its story. If what we see is only the surface, then perhaps Siberia has never truly been explored, because the most terrifying thing about this land doesn't lie above ground. It's hidden underneath, and there's one place in particular where every step feels like walking over a buried memory, where time itself seems to have erased its presence to protect something. The locals call it by a name that sends chills down the spine. The Valley of Death, tucked deep in the remote taiga forests of the Sakha Republic, near the Vilyui River. This is a place few dare to visit twice. The Valley of Death doesn't look like a wasteland in the usual sense. There are no dry bones, no snowy fields of sorrow. But there are stories so strange that even the government once stayed silent. Hunters have returned with bizarre burns on their skin. Animals vanish without a trace. And strangest of all, massive metal structures, dome-shaped, half-buried underground, with only their curved tops peeking out when the ice melts in summer. No one knows exactly what they are. Those who've touched them say they're unnaturally cold, as if they absorb no heat, no matter how hot the air gets. Some claim to have heard a faint humming deep below the ground, like distant metal ringing softly. But then they stopped talking. Some experienced temporary memory loss. Others never returned. There are no official records of these domes, but scattered accounts from the 19th century Russian expeditions remain. They describe half-spheres, larger than houses, tilted in the ground like abandoned machines. One report described a dome made of a rustless alloy, impossible to break, impossible to cut. And that raises the obvious question. If modern technology still can't create something like that, who did and when? Some theories whisper that these are remnants of an ancient defense system, maybe energy weapons, or interplanetary communication devices from a time before humans ever walked the Earth. Others go even further. They say this area was once a monitoring station for a civilization not from here, and those structures, they're not dormant. They are still working, quietly, deep below the surface. Whatever the truth may be, there is one thing everyone agrees on. The land around these domes isn't normal. Compasses go haywire, electronics glitch out, plants grow twisted, It feels like standing on a crack in the world, where some hidden force is still pulsing beneath your feet. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but you can feel it. No one knows how many domes remain buried in the ice. Dozens, hundreds, or are the visible ones just the tips of something far bigger? A massive underground network stretching across Siberia, with only a few peaks showing through the thinning ice, like the tips of a giant machine, asleep beneath the frost. And if Siberia really is sitting on something humanity has never known, then every map, every history, every belief about where we came from may need to be rewritten. But maybe that's exactly why this land was left to the snow and ice, not to preserve it, but to hide it. Because whatever's buried beneath the frozen earth, maybe it was never meant to be awakened. If in the Valley of Death, people saw massive metal domes lying still beneath the ice, then, in Tunguska, they heard something else. An explosion. They saw the flash. They felt the pressure wave. And they were left with questions no one could answer. No object. No crater. Just an empty scar in the forest, where 80 million trees were flattened outward, as if a giant hand had swept down from the sky. And it's that absence, the lack of evidence, that makes the Tunguska event one of the deepest cracks in our understanding of the world. Whatever is happening in Batagaika, it is growing, and nothing can stop it. Scientists call it a warning sign of extreme climate shifts, but the locals just shake their heads and say, "The air doesn't open the earth. Something else opens the earth." Maybe what's opening isn't just the ground, but a deeper layer of perception, a layer humanity must face. As the ice melts, as the structures of the present collapse, and as truths buried long ago begin to emerge. When physical gateways like Batagaika crack open, others within our minds, within history, within understanding, won't stay shut for long. And somewhere in those widening fissures, something familiar keeps appearing. Deep, perfectly round holes, suddenly yawning open in the earth. Not jagged, not random, perfect circles, as if carved not by nature, but by intelligence. Another sign on the growing map of things science still has no name for. Another place, not far from Batagaika, where enormous craters appear without warning, and no one dares to get too close. The first one was recorded in 2014. A massive sinkhole suddenly opened in the permafrost of Yamal, a region the indigenous Nenets people call the edge of the world. The hole was nearly 100 feet wide and more than 200 feet deep. Its walls so vertical it looked like something enormous had drilled straight into the earth. There were no signs of gradual collapse, no loud explosion, just a hole. And within only a few years, over 20 similar craters appeared across the region. The initial explanation blamed methane gas. Trapped for thousands of years in the ice, it was supposedly released when the permafrost melted due to climate change. A silent gas bomb erupting under pressure. Lethal, but without fire, without noise. Yet, something about that explanation doesn't hold. Why are the holes almost perfectly round, instead of jagged and uneven like natural explosions? Why is there no evidence of fire? No burn marks, no charred edges. And most puzzling of all, why did some magnetic field detectors near these sites pick up strange fluctuations just before the craters appeared? The local people tell a different story. They say this land once had gates, that led deep underground, home to beings of light. In Nenet's legend, there's something called the breath of the earth, an invisible force rising from the deepest layers, carrying memory, spirit, and sometimes punishment. When the holes began appearing, the people weren't surprised. They simply said, "They've returned." Back in the 1980s, long before the first crater formed, Russian researchers secretly surveyed areas of the Yamal permafrost. What they found was disturbing. Massive underground erosion patterns, like gas vents, but far too large to fit any known geological explanation. One report, later pulled from circulation, noted spiral-shaped cylindrical structures, uniform in shape, hollow in the center, unlikely to form naturally without directional pressure, and central architecture. In simpler terms, it was as if someone had built breathing tubes for a system buried deep below the surface. What's even more intriguing, the major Yamal craters seem to form a nearly straight line, pointing north, toward what some believe was once the center of a long-lost frozen continent. Theories began to surface once again. An ancient energy grid, the remains of a prehistoric underground system. Maybe what we're seeing is the effect of something slowly waking up, now that the ice, once the final seal, is cracking. Thermal satellite imagery over Yamal reveals that these holes often appear after bursts of unexplained energy, despite no seismic activity, as if what's causing them isn't a physical shift, but an energy pulse rising from below, a kind of bioelectric breath, an ancient automated system, or simply a warning after millennia of silence. No one knows for sure. Our instruments are still primitive compared to whatever's happening down there, but one thing is clear. Siberia isn't just melting, it's opening. And the holes in Yamal, they're like the first eyes, blinking open, looking back at the human world, after a sleep longer than history itself. And if those holes are the windows, then where is the door? Somewhere deeper, colder, darker than any of these craters. There may be a city, not on land, not in legend, but beneath the water where no light has ever reached. Yet stone still rises, in the shape of pyramids. Deeper still lies Lake Baikal, and whatever rests at its bottom may challenge our most basic ideas of architecture, memory, and the story of what once was. They call it the blue eye of Siberia. But Lake Baikal isn't just the deepest freshwater lake on Earth. It is a primordial rift in the planet's crust, deeper than some oceans, a place where time doesn't seem to flow the way it does elsewhere. And sometimes, in rare, perfect moments, the ice and water reveal something different. Shapes that don't belong to nature. Pyramids, straight lines, sharp corners, as if something once built still sleeps beneath its surface. The first reports didn't come from archaeologists. They came from divers, biologists, and fishermen. They spoke of large stone blocks, stacked like steps, pyramid-shaped with flat tops or pointed peaks, resting deep in the lake. Under perfect conditions, some of these formations reflect light like glass, suggesting the stone was unnaturally smoothed. But that's all we have. Stories, no clear photos, no 3D scans, no official survey has ever gone deep enough to confirm what might be down there. Why? No one really says. Only that dives below 300 meters are always called off for technical and safety reasons. But the people who live around the lake aren't surprised. They have their own legends. They say this was once the center of the old sky, where gods descended from the stars and built an energy station to align the earth with the cosmic rhythm, a place not meant for living, but for tuning the flow of time itself. And when that alignment slipped, it was sealed, not by nature, but by decision. Another theory, less mythical, but no less strange, suggests Baikal didn't form naturally. With depths over 1,600 meters and nearly vertical walls, the lake doesn't match any other inland water system on Earth. Some geophysicists found uplifted rock layers and curved fault lines at the bottom, as if the ground had been opened and then collapsed inward. And among those cracks, sonar scans have picked up formations that may be stacked stone structures. In 2009, a small research team claimed to have detected an unusual magnetic signal in the lake's southern basin, an area with zero artificial electromagnetic activity. The pulses were faint but steady, repeating, as if broadcasting something, but no one knows how to receive it. Is it an ancient device still running, a warning system, or just the fading echo of something far greater? Whatever sleeps beneath Siberia, it's not silent, it speaks in pulses, in shadows, in memory, and sometimes in the faint hum of stone and metal, long buried under ice and time. Some researchers believe these anomalies aren't isolated. They're connected, like nodes in a forgotten network. In Yakutia, the land of endless winter, the earth itself seems unstable. Not because of earthquakes, not because of weather, but because reality bends here. Civilian pilots call these zones gray areas, places where compasses spin aimlessly, GPS freezes and fails, radios drop into static, and when the planes land, many report a strange, breathless sensation, as if something unseen is pulling the air from their lungs. Early explanations were simple magnetic rocks, crustal instability, the shifting magnetic north, but the puzzle isn't the interference, it's the consistency. The anomalies happen in the exact same spots, year after year, decade after decade. And stranger still, many of these zones overlap perfectly, with sites of ancient ruins or places local legend marks as forbidden. In 1979, a Soviet geophysical team conducted a survey in a desolate part of western Yakutia. Their instruments recorded something impossible, a low-frequency disturbance. No sound, but it triggered the human nervous system. People grew dizzy, disoriented, and in some cases, hallucinations. Shortly after, the project was shut down. Equipment recalled, reports classified. The reindeer herders of Yakutia never needed instruments to know something was wrong. They avoid certain valleys, where the sky always feels heavier, birds refuse to fly, and the grass grows in patchy, unnatural clumps. On windless nights, some swear they hear a deep mechanical hum, rising from the ground, not from the surface, from far below. Modern theorists have a radical idea. They believe that beneath Yakutia's permafrost lies an ancient metallic structure, not quite a ship, not quite a building, but a colossal electromagnetic device, still operating, barely. This could explain the persistent magnetic interference, the low-frequency pulses, even the altered mental states, reported by those who come too close. Others take the idea even further, connecting it to the Valley of Death, a place where explorers once reported giant metal domes, half buried in the tundra, leaking a deadly radiation. The theory: these devices aren't isolated, they're connected, a neural system for the planet itself, nodes of energy or information, pulsing silently across the land, each point a note in a forgotten symphony. No one remembers how to hear. Whatever this system is, it affects life itself. In the strongest anomaly zones, trees grow twisted, leaning in no consistent direction. Plants are stunted or refuse to grow at all. Animals behave erratically, and people, they get lost. Not just geographically, emotionally, they describe a profound sense of dislocation, as if they've stepped out of place, not just in space, but in time. Is this a natural phenomenon, or the legacy of a civilization that mastered magnetism long before we ever understood a compass? No official answer exists, but one truth remains. Out there, somewhere in Siberia, the needle doesn't point north. It points to a void, a blank spot that has never been charted. And then, things get stranger. Because sometimes a stone, the Earth's oldest, most honest record, holds objects that shouldn't exist. Fossilized artifacts, a 3-centimeter rusted screw embedded in a 300-million-year-old stone slab in Kamchatka, a mechanical gear frozen inside a block of coal from the Permian period, aluminum-magnesium alloy pipes excavated from dense rock in the Yakutsk region, buried in layers that should be impenetrable by anything softer than steel. Mainstream scientists have tried to explain them all away: archaeological contamination, modern forgery, misidentified samples. But advanced analysis revealed something worse. Some alloys don't match any known industrial process. Some artifacts show precision machining, spiral threads, perfect flat cuts, as if they came straight off a modern assembly line, yet they're locked inside rock older than dinosaurs. An internal report from the Russian Institute of Geophysical Sciences in 1996 included one haunting line: certain metallic objects are encased in deep mineral structures that cannot form in less than 100,000 years, with no viable geological mechanism to explain their presence. The report was never published. The artifacts quietly disappeared. Some researchers call them out-of-place artifacts, a polite label, neutral, designed to keep the world comfortable. But the truth is clear. If metal was machined hundreds of millions of years ago, then only two possibilities exist. Human technological history stretches into an unthinkably distant past, or other hands once existed here. Hands not human, hands that built and vanished, leaving behind fragments, like a final whisper. Some believe these objects are the fossilized remnants of a civilization wiped out by a planet-scale disaster, a polar shift, a great flood, or an ancient war using weapons we can't even imagine. And the most unsettling discovery: some artifacts appear deliberately broken, fractured symmetrically as if they were disabled, as if someone didn't want them to work again, or worse, was afraid that they might. If these fossilized machines were once part of a larger system, then the question is unavoidable. Where's the rest of it? What powered them? What kept them running? The answer may lie in one of the most remote places on Earth, the Putarana Plateau. Some believe Siberia was once home to a race of giants, not myth, not legend, a lost human offshoot, or a genetically engineered species from before the Ice Age. Ancient texts whisper about them. Some call them Nephilim, the sky-bearers of old. Others see them as remnants of a forgotten experiment, buried beneath shifting earth. An ideology. Among the Yakut and Khakas, the stories are the same. They speak of giant beings who appeared like mist, dwelling in remote mountains or underground, never harming humans, but never allowing trespassers. Entire regions remain sacred, not for vague spiritual reasons, but because, as the locals say, there are sleeping giants there. And in light of what may have been buried at Mamayev, those words no longer sound metaphorical. Declassified Soviet-era notes reveal haunting phrases repeated again and again, unfit for publication. Contradicts evolutionary theory, disruptive to ideological order. The issue was never whether the bones were real. The issue was, if they were real, then everything we believe about human history would need to be rewritten. The most unsettling idea: what if those beings never went extinct, like the Denisovans? What if they didn't vanish, but instead they went underground, surviving in deep valleys, hidden in permafrost, or leaving behind something else in their place? Magnetic fields, stone structures, energy systems we mistake for natural formations. In Mamayev, strange electromagnetic signals are still recorded today. Military communications sometimes fail. Low-flying aircraft report sudden pressure anomalies. Satellite images reveal massive trench-like imprints running through nearby valleys, as if something colossal once moved there, leaving no trace, except for a magnetic imbalance. Could the giants be real? Not myth, not metaphor, but the true rulers of a chapter in history we were never meant to read. Maybe the bones, the footprints, and the frequencies are all pieces of something larger. A civilization that didn't speak, didn't write, and left behind no monuments, just presence. And if that's true, then perhaps the giants never truly disappeared. They simply stepped back into shadow. So a new order, ours, could take the stage. But their shadow still lingers deep across the ice of Siberia, waiting for someone brave enough to face it. When the giants stepped aside, they left no message, but the spaces they vacated, in the forests, the mountains, and beneath the stone, were soon filled by something else. Belief. Not organized religion, not doctrine, the breath of the soul, woven into everyday life. And in the frozen lands of Siberia, where life and death are separated by a single veil of mist, no people have kept that belief more faithfully than the Evenk. The Evenk see the forest, not just as home, but as the border between worlds. To them, the world isn't singular. Every mountain, river, and stone has a spirit, not metaphorical, real. They speak of gateways, places where the veil between realms is thin, lakes impossibly deep, cliffs where no wind ever passes, valleys where the earth suddenly drops. These are not just sacred places. They are thin places where a soul can slip through. They call that realm Bugur, not just the afterlife, but a parallel reality, a place where the spirits of ancestors live on, and where unnamed beings are born. Evenk shamans, spiritual travelers, must learn to walk the forest without losing their way. But what they navigate is not just trees, it's the second layer of reality. One of their oldest traditions is the three-level journey: the middle world, the lower world, the upper world. In dreams, They speak of eyeless ancestors, beings of light that sing without words, and strange journeys through landscapes that don't exist on any map. Certain places are so potent that locals refuse to stay past sunset, not because of demons, but because they fear they might forget the way back. Strangely, many of these spiritual gateways overlap with scientifically verified anomalies, places where compasses spin, radios crackle, animals flee without cause. While scientists debate data, the Evenk simply shrug and say, "That is not our place." In the Soviet era, some shamans were invited to join geological and military expeditions. Some refused, not for political reasons, but because they didn't want to reopen the old roads. A few who went along spoke of hearing voices in the stone, no words, just rhythm, a deep, drum-like sound from beneath the earth, sometimes like breathing, as if something was asleep or waking. Modern science calls this auditory hallucination. But if generations hear the same sound in the same places, is it still imaginary? In the 19th century, European mystics described Siberia as the spiritual gateway of the continent, not because it was sacred, but because it was empty enough for another world to touch this one. In that vast silence where physics yields to perception, maybe all religion began, not with sermons, but with stillness. And in the places where giants once walked, maybe all that remains is the breath of spirit. The Evenk, who built no temples, wrote no books, and formed no sects, still carry that ancient rhythm in their drums, their chants, and their sacred silence. But the most haunting stories are those of the shamans who never returned, not because they died, but because they went too far. Some who came back spoke of lands without snow, of glowing architecture, and beings without form, places where they were only visitors. Maybe their beliefs aren't mythic remnants, maybe they're fragments of a knowledge system that once ran parallel to ancient civilizations. Hyperborea, Atlantis, Lemuria, where reality flowed like a bloodstream, not divided by reason. And if that's true, then maybe the gate is still open, not by map, not by GPS, but by the only instrument humans truly have: consciousness. And in that place, where the boundary between life and death, spirit and matter, is thinnest, someone once found a perfectly preserved body, buried in ice for 2,500 years. She had strange tattoos, a serene expression, eyes gently closed, as if she were dreaming of a world that never truly left. They say some beings in Siberia were never human at all. Not ancestors, not spirits, not gods, but something else entirely. The Evenk legends call them the gods of steel, beings from the sky, not born, not aged. They simply arrived. In their oldest stories, they're given many names: the ones who wear light, the undying, the ones with skin harder than stone. No one knows where they came from, but everyone agrees they were not of this earth. The Evenk say they appeared in beams of light, without sound, walking through air, leaving no footprints, and vanishing before sunrise. No one ever saw them build anything. Yet, when they were gone, stones stood in perfect rows, forests split into corridors, and the ground began to hum like the slow, steady breath of something enormous. One of the strangest stories comes from Verkhoyansk, one of the coldest places on Earth, yet burning with the heat of myth. Here, the people speak of a dream, passed down through generations. In every lifetime, only one person in the village dreams of the man of metal. He does not speak. He does not touch. He simply stands, glowing softly like moonlight. And afterward, the dreamer changes. They say things they don't understand. They draw symbols no one taught them. And sometimes they walk into the mountains and never come back. Science calls this collective psychology, cultural memory, or the result of isolation in extreme environments. But how do you explain this? That these men of steel are described with uncanny similarity in Sumerian texts, Egyptian carvings, Dogon star maps in West Africa, and the Nazca lines of South America. Across continents, across thousands of years, the same image repeats: beings from the sky, bearers of knowledge, immortal, bodies that shine like metal. Some call it the ancient astronaut theory, that extraterrestrials visited Earth tens of thousands of years ago, seeded wisdom, influenced evolution, and left. But in Siberia, it isn't just theory. It's a lived memory, passed through ritual, through forbidden places, where steel beneath the earth is still warm. Perhaps it's no coincidence that the sites tied to the sky gods overlap with buried metal domes in Yakutia, electromagnetic anomalies, fossilized artifacts with laser-like incisions. The intersection of mythology and archaeology is now too precise to call it coincidence. Fragments have been found in Siberia, metal alloys with crystal structures, clearly artificial, polished spheres trapped in ancient ice. Internal reports once presented at the Russian Academy of Sciences quietly stated, several samples display physical properties that cannot yet be replicated by modern techniques. So, if the gods of steel were real, why did they come? And what did they leave behind? Some mystics believe they never fully left. Not all of them came from outer space. Some came from layered dimensions, realities woven into ours, visible only when human vibration matches theirs. They say stone structures, submerged pyramids in Lake Baikal, and shamanic gateways are the leftover links between two realms. Maybe that's why some people in dreams or deep meditation still see them standing there, saying nothing, doing nothing, just watching. Not like rulers, but like those with the patience to wait, waiting for humanity to mature enough to finally look back, not through telescopes, but through the mind. And if one day all these fragments, buried in stone, trapped in memory, whispers in legend, begin to click together like a long-lost puzzle, then we may realize something profound. We were never alone, and we were never truly on our own. Not all civilizations left behind temples or monuments. Some chose a different path, to hide beneath the ground. And among these lands of hidden knowledge, the Altai Mountains remain one of the most mysterious, too vast to ignore, too empty to understand. Then came the evidence, testimonies, magnetic readings, classified maps, all pointing to one thing. Beneath the Altai lies something that does not belong to natural geology, tunnels. No one knows where they begin. No one has ever reached the end. From Tsarist Russia to the Soviet Union and even modern expeditions, explorers report geological anomalies that defy explanation, hollow corridors stretching hundreds of meters, Smooth, symmetrical walls, perfect curves, uniform widths. These aren't random formations. They hint at artificial design. Design created by a technology beyond anything we have today. Some tunnels are said to connect valleys across the Altai range, boring through solid granite, without leaving debris, tool marks, or signs of drilling. In some areas, rocks show heat-induced transformation, melted at extreme temperatures, then flash-cooled, forming glass-like surfaces, a process requiring an energy source we do not yet understand. And inside these tunnels, the magnetic field behaves wrong. Compasses spin, sensors detect rhythmic pulses, infrared cameras fail, batteries drain. Scientists call it a self-resonating, closed environment. But no one can answer who built it or when. The locals are not surprised. They've always told stories of stone serpents running through the mountains, places the ancient ones once lived and then vanished. A shape of a man, but without a face, and they always appear the same way. In snowstorms, standing upright, unaffected by wind or cold, and vanishing the moment you truly see them. For generations, the legends of these silver beings have haunted Siberia. They appear in 19th century expedition journals, Evenk oral traditions, Yakut shamanic chants, and nomadic Kazakh stories. From the Far East, the descriptions rarely change: taller than any human, metallic fabric or armor glinting in white, a blurred, vague face, silent, unmoving, always in the heart of a storm. Some see them from a distance and dismiss them as illusions. Others see them up close, and that is always the last moment. They belong to this world because the figure doesn't walk away, it doesn't dissolve, it simply ceases to exist the instant your eyes meet theirs. Witnesses report a sensation, a stillness in the chest, like waking from someone else's dream. In 1956, a Soviet geological team in the Verkhoyansk range recorded a sourceless light. At 2 a.m., the temperature -40 stopni Celsjusza. Yet in the eye of the storm, instruments recorded a sudden 5 degrees Celsius spike. No aircraft, no lightning, just a shape of metal gliding silently through the mist. The report was classified. One engineer later recalled the strangest detail: my mechanical watch stopped the moment the figure passed, and it never worked again. Science, as always, tried to explain light refraction in ice crystals, neurological stress from isolation, hypothermia-induced hallucination. But if it's all hallucination, then why does it repeat across centuries, across tribes, across modern and ancient witnesses, with the same details? Some fringe theorists suggest the silver ones aren't biological beings at all. They are projections, echoes of a non-physical intelligence. They can adjust their waveform to appear at the boundary between our reality and human consciousness. And when snowstorms erupt, when electromagnetic fields twist those boundaries thin, for a moment, certain doors open. And what steps through does not come to talk. It comes to observe, to check, as if returning to a place it once owned, long before humans walked there. An old Evenk legend says, in the coldest season, when the snow breathes in clouds, the people of light return to see if we still remember. They do not speak, they only stand. And if no one remembers them, they leave, taking with them a piece of memory that never returns. A poetic story, but with a weight that chills you to the bone. Because the true fear isn't that the silver ones are coming. It's that they once belonged here, and now they only visit, like echoes, from a chapter of history we never wrote down. So what are they? Sky gods? Guardians of the buried energy gates? Or the last ones to enter? The hidden library beneath the ice? If the silver ones are real, then they are a sign, a test, a warning. And those who see them stand at the edge of another reality, a layer that maybe, just maybe, Soviet expeditions once stepped into and never returned. Officially, there were no disappearances, no accidents, no deaths. Unofficially, entire teams vanished into the snow, files marked inaccessible, names removed from record, equipment retrieved, labeled damaged, families told not to speak. One of the most chilling cases occurred in 1982. A Tizenkertagu expedition entered the Kodar Mountains after reports of unidentified frequency pulses. For 3 weeks, their transmissions were steady. Then, radio silence. 10 days later, a search team found their campsite. Equipment still running, supplies untouched, kettle of water still warm. But no people, no footprints, no sign of struggle. Only a field journal, time-stamped 3:47 a.m. The light is back to the east. The echo is clearer this time. The rock pulse is faint. We're going deeper. If we're wrong, this may be the last. It was. Theories emerged. Sudden weather shift, subsurface collapse, mass psychogenic episode. But if that were true, why were all systems untouched? Why was there no seismic activity? And why did a military security unit seal the area for 3 months? This isn't isolated. 1966, Tunguska biologists vanished. 1973, Lake Labinkir archaeologists disappeared. 1991, international expedition near the Lena River, gone. No bodies, no wreckage, just missing. The locals call these places the open lands with no voice. They believe if someone crosses a threshold, they don't die. They are simply kept, not lost, kept, as if Siberia itself is sentient. And some people, it chooses not to release. The Evenk shamans call them keepers of the threshold, formless beings that appear when someone gets too close to a gate that should never open. They do not attack, they do not speak, they just appear to remind us not all knowledge is meant for us. And when researchers began to plot the disappearances, the pattern became undeniable. Lines, paths tracing magnetic anomalies, stone towers, sealed artifact sites. In between these lines, military zones marked inaccessible due to technical conditions. No further explanation, just boundaries and warnings not to cross. As researchers dug deeper, one name kept surfacing again and again: the Lena River, a 4,000-kilometer waterway from Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean, long called the Artery of Siberia. And maybe, beneath its frozen waters, something is buried, not by time, but by decision. Beneath the endless white of Siberia, the Lena River winds like a vein through ice, its surface silent, its waters black and frozen, its secrets older than memory. For most of human history, the Lena has been a boundary, a line between what we know and what we fear to imagine. Its 4,000 kilometers stretch from Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean, but locals say the river doesn't just flow. It remembers. Generations of the Evenk and Yakut speak of cities in the water, places that once glowed beneath the ice, then went dark when the Cold Age came. They don't call it Atlantis. They don't even call it a civilization. To them, it was simply people who lived under the river, not like fish, like us. But they are gone now. At first, these were just stories, whispers to frighten children, or honor the spirits of the water. But then, science arrived. From the late 20th century, Soviet and post-Soviet teams used radar and sonar to map the riverbed. What they found did not belong in nature. Straight lines, perfect angles, geometric formations where chaos should reign. Massive stone terraces, column-like structures, aligned in symmetry, a pattern that looked less like erosion and more like architecture. In 2004, an international research team digitally reconstructed a segment of the river floor. What they saw was unmistakable. Perfectly even columns, right-angled formations, a bridge-like structure spanning 300 meters with crisp 90-degree edges. It wasn't nature, it wasn't chance, it was designed. The site overlapped exactly with old Soviet maps, labeled geomagnetic instability zones, a code phrase used for sites with unexplainable electromagnetic activity. Then came the stone samples, recovered from the riverbed. Near the anomaly, they bore marks that defied explanation. Some slabs showed thermal scarring, vitrified outer layers, patterns only created by immense precise heat. Not erosion, not ice, not time. Technology, the dating, 10,000 to 14,000 years old. A time when, according to modern history, Siberia was nothing but frozen wasteland, home to no advanced civilization at all. So, what were these? The ruins of a glacial city, an energy station or dimensional node, or the remains of a civilization that existed before history began. For centuries, these encounters have been recorded in 19th century survey journals, early Soviet expeditions, nomadic herders in the Far East, all telling the same story, with hauntingly similar details. In 1956, a Soviet geological team, camped in the Kodar Mountains, reported something extraordinary. At 2 a.m., in the heart of a snowstorm, they saw light with no source, no lightning, no aurora, no aircraft. A glowing form moved silently through the blizzard. One engineer described it as a man made of metal, gliding without footsteps, and the snow would not touch him. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. When they checked their instruments, they found 3 anomalies. Temperature spike of 5 degrees Celsius in a single square meter, magnetic interference, disrupting compasses, a mechanical wristwatch that stopped forever. The instant the figure passed, the report was classified, the team was reassigned. Science tried to explain it. Light refraction through ice, polar neurological effects, group hallucination. But how does hallucination stop a watch? How does refraction raise the temperature of frozen Earth? Over the years, encounters with the Silver Ones continued in whispers, every story the same. They appear in blizzards, they stand but never attack, and they vanish the moment a human gaze truly locks onto them. Some fringe scholars suggest they are not biological at all, that they are projections of a non-physical intelligence, an intelligence that waits for storms and magnetic shifts, because those are the moments when reality thins. The Evenk have a saying: when snow breathes in clouds, the people of light return. They do not come to warn or attack. They come to see if we remember. If no one recognizes them, they leave. And the legend continues. Each time they leave unseen, they take a piece of memory with them, and it never comes back. The vanishing expeditions, the faceless ones, are not the only mystery. Throughout the 20th century, entire expeditions vanished in these frozen lands. 1966, a team of young biologists disappeared in northern Tunguska. 1973, a civilian archaeological group vanished near Lake Labinkir, leaving equipment behind and no tracks in the snow. 1982, a Tsinketagu expedicio entered the Kodar Mountains after detecting frequency pulses. For 3 weeks, their radio logs were steady. Then, silence. A search team arrived 10 days later. What they found was impossible. Campsite intact, equipment running, food prepared, kettle water still warm, but no people, no footprints leaving the site, no sign of struggle. The final journal entry read, "The light is back to the east. The echo is clearer this time. The rock pulse is faint. We're going deeper. If we're wrong, this may be the last." After that, the site was sealed for 3 months. No public report was released. Locals began calling these areas the open lands with no voice. They believe that when someone crosses an invisible threshold, they don't die. They stop belonging to this world, not lost, but kept, as if Siberia itself is a sentient being that chooses who may leave and who will stay forever. The Evenk shamans call these beings the keepers of the threshold, formless watchers, who appear when humans get too close to the gates that must never open. They don't attack, they don't speak, they only stand in the snow and wait for you to understand. Not all returning expeditions came back whole. Some survivors wandered for days in silence, unable to recognize family or speak their own names. Medical evaluations showed no brain damage, yet their eyes looked as if they had lived 1,000 lives. This is why so many of Siberia's mysteries are never officially acknowledged, because the ones who return changed, and the ones who don't never return at all. The map of disappearances. When independent researchers began plotting these vanishings, they found something chilling. They were not random. The lines connected magnetic anomalies, stone towers of Tanu Ola, buried domes of Yakutia, unmarked Soviet restricted zones. The gaps between these lines were forbidden areas, on official maps labeled only as inaccessible due to technical conditions. No further explanation, no public acknowledgement. The pattern suggests something undeniable. Siberia is not just land, it is infrastructure, a living network of nodes, gates, and keepers. And the silver ones are not here to attack. They are here to observe, to guard, to wait. Because somewhere, deep beneath the ice, a door is still closed. And maybe we were never meant to open it. In the coldest heart of Siberia, where snowstorms swallow the horizon and silence reigns supreme, there are stories too strange to dismiss. Stories that speak of watchers, beings who are neither alive nor dead, who appear only when the land itself seems to breathe. The Evenk people call them the faceless ones, but in whispered tones, they are also known as the ones in silver. They are said to appear draped in shimmering armor, motionless against the storm, taller than any human, with no clear faces, just the impression of presence. They never speak, they never move, and when your eyes meet theirs, they vanish. No flash, no sound, just the sudden weight of silence pressing against your chest, leaving a mark that feels like waking from a dream you were never meant to have. The first documented reports date back to the 19th century. Russian surveyors trekking through the frozen wilderness claimed to see glinting forms in the distance, standing in the snow like statues. When they approached, the figures dissolved into fog. Their journals describe an almost physical sense of being watched, of memory being pulled from them, though they could not explain why. Then came 1956. A Soviet geological team in the frozen Verkhoyansk Mountains reported a light with no source during a 2 a.m. blizzard. Their instruments recorded a sudden 5-degree temperature spike, impossible in the lethal cold. One engineer saw a shape, a body of silver moving against the storm. His mechanical wristwatch stopped the instant the figure passed, and it never ticked again. Science offered its usual answers: light refraction, ice crystal illusions, oxygen deprivation. Yet the same descriptions repeated for over a century, across thousands of kilometers, across cultures that had never spoken to each other. Some scholars have pushed a theory few dare to entertain. The silver ones are projections, not flesh and blood, but manifestations of a non-physical intelligence, one that can adjust its form to appear only when the veil between realities is thin. Snowstorms, charged with electromagnetic energy, may act like a gateway, opening a door for them to step through. The Evank have an old saying: when snow breathes in clouds, the people of light return. They do not speak, they only stand, and if we do not remember them, they take our memory away. It sounds poetic, but it explains why some who see the faceless ones never return the same. By the early 1980s, the stories of vanishings became more than legend. Expeditions began to disappear without explanation. No tracks, no signs of struggle, no radio calls for help. One of the most chilling incidents occurred in 1982, when a 12-person geological survey team entered the Kodar Mountains after detecting strange, low-frequency signals. For 3 weeks, transmissions were steady. Then, radio silence. When the search party arrived, they found everything intact: tents, instruments, even a kettle of water still warm over the extinguished fire. But no people, no footprints leading away. The only clue was the final entry in the field journal, written at 3:47 a.m. The light is back to the east. The echo is clearer this time. The rock pulse is faint. We are going deeper. If we are wrong, this may be the last. And it was. The incident was classified. Family members received vague notifications. Maps of the area were later marked as technically inaccessible, a phrase Soviet authorities used for locations of interest they could not explain. Other cases followed. A team of young biologists in 1966, gone. An archaeological group near Lake Labankia in 1973, gone. A small international expedition along the Lena River in 1991, gone. Locals have a name for these cursed zones. They call them the open lands without a voice, because once you cross an invisible threshold, you don't die, you simply stop belonging to this world. Maps of these vanishings tell their own story. When the incidents are plotted across Siberia, the points align. Straight lines, geometric paths. And along those paths lie the same repeating anomalies, magnetic disturbances where compasses spin wildly, stone towers that hum with low, rhythmic pulses, sealed underground structures no one has ever opened. And at the very center of these alignments flows the Lena River, Siberia's ancient artery. The river may be hiding more than water. Its frozen depths have whispered secrets for generations. The Lena River cuts across the heart of Siberia like a frozen vein, stretching over 4,000 kilometers from the icy edges of Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean. On maps, it looks like just another waterway. But beneath its cold surface, deep in the silt and black currents, lies a secret so old that time itself seems to recoil from it. For centuries, the indigenous Yakut and Evank people have whispered the same story. Along the river's deepest bends, cities once lived under the water. They didn't glow with fire or torchlight like ours. They glimmered like the reflection of stars on black ice. And then, without warning, they went dark. The people who lived there didn't die. They left, or they were taken. Modern science didn't take those legends seriously until the 2000s. In 2004, a research team surveying the Lena's northwestern reaches captured subaquatic sonar images of something impossible. At depths of 40 meters, they found perfectly straight lines cutting across the riverbed, geometric terraces arranged in patterns no current or glacier could carve, columns and steps that seemed deliberately placed, forming a drowned corridor. The most startling discovery was a stone bridge, submerged and half buried in silt. 300 meters long, 8 meters wide, 90-degree edges, and nearly flawless symmetry, appearing as if it had once been a road before the river swallowed it whole. Sediment analysis dated the overlying layers to 10,000 to 14,000 years old, meaning the structure itself had to predate the last ice age. Mainstream history insists no advanced civilization existed in Siberia at that time. Yet the Lena River tells another story. The location of this submerged bridge wasn't random. When old Soviet military maps were compared, the site fell directly within a geophysical magnetic instability zone, the same type of anomaly that caused expeditions to vanish elsewhere in Siberia. It raises an unsettling question. Was this riverbed once part of an engineered landscape? Samples of stone recovered from the site deepened the mystery. Some slabs showed thermal vitrification, as if exposed to extreme localized heat, hot enough to turn stone into glass. Microscopic examination revealed laser-like incisions with sharp, non-erosive edges, and the outer layer of several stones had crystalline structures not naturally formed underwater. The implications are staggering. Either an unknown ancient culture in Siberia mastered high-energy technology long before recorded history, or something non-human built this network for a purpose we still can't grasp. Among the Yakut, the river has always been more than a waterway. They call certain bends the places that listen. Fishermen speak of hearing faint hums beneath the ice, like the river itself is alive, or maybe broadcasting. Local lore insists there are gates under the water, not physical doors, but thresholds to the world of the unseen. And when sonar picked up regular pulse intervals from the river's floor, repeating every 19 seconds, the line between myth and evidence blurred. Military hydrophones confirmed the pulses, but after 27 days, the signal stopped. It hasn't returned. If the Lena River's anomalies are part of a larger system, they may connect to the Alai mountain tunnels, smooth, perfect corridors carved through granite without tools, the Tanu Ola stone towers geometrically aligned antennas emitting low-frequency signals. The submerged pyramids of Lake Baikal, structures reflecting light like glass under certain conditions. Together, these sites form a silent blueprint, as if Siberia itself is a living machine, its memories stored in stone and ice, waiting to awaken. Some researchers believe the lunar structures weren't just functional. They were part of a planetary network, a neural grid that spanned continents. Similar anomalies appear in the Nazca Plateau in South America, the Giza Plateau in Egypt, the Himalayan energy zones in Tibet. What if the Lena River isn't just a graveyard of forgotten architecture? What if it's a switch, waiting for the right resonance to turn the system back on? When local divers approached one of the submerged formations in 2012, they reported something they could not explain. The moment they touched the smooth stone surface, a low vibration passed through their bodies, not painful, but heavy, like standing inside a silent bell. Their depth gauges flickered, cameras glitched, and one diver swore he heard a voice in his helmet. Not words, not sound, just recognition. If true, the Lena River may hold the final piece of a puzzle that links Siberia's domes, tunnels, towers, and artifacts into one impossible truth. Humanity was never the first intelligence here, and maybe we still aren't the most advanced. The river doesn't end the story. It only opens the door to the last layer of Siberia's mystery, a layer that exists beyond evidence and reason. A place not built to teach us, but to remember us, in case we forget what we once were. Deep in the silent heart of Siberia, where white emptiness stretches farther than the horizon and time itself seems frozen, there are whispers of a place few dare to seek. It's not marked on maps. It has no official name. But in the language of the Yakut, the Evank, and the Dolgan people, it is called the place where stone can read and ice can remember. Archaeologists call it a myth, a tale born of endless winters and human imagination. But the legends are remarkably consistent across tribes separated by hundreds of kilometers. There is a chamber beneath the earth, built before memory. Inside, stone walls are lined like shelves, each block humming softly with a memory that isn't its own. Those who enter don't learn. They remember, as if the library doesn't give knowledge, but unlocks something buried within. In the late 19th century, during a Russian geological survey near Irkutsk, miners stumbled upon something that seemed like the first page of that myth come to life. Beneath ancient limestone, they uncovered perfectly symmetrical circular chambers, descending tens of meters below ground. Walls lined with stacked stone slabs, smooth, uniform, and polished like purpose-built shelves. A black stone monolith at the center, smooth as glass, but casting strangely distorted reflections. Workers described the stone as cold, heavy, and wrong, as if touching it drained the warmth from their hands. Light bent around its edges. Shadows rippled unnaturally across the walls, and standing near it too long brought on sudden nausea, disorientation, spontaneous tears without emotion. The site was immediately sealed by the Tsarist authorities. No official papers were published. But in the diaries of a young geologist, discovered decades later, one sentence stood out. The stone does not speak in words, it speaks in memory. He claimed that for hours after leaving the chamber, he remembered things he'd never experienced. Walking through forests of another era, seeing stars from a sky that felt unfamiliar, and hearing the humming of the earth itself. The Soviet era brought renewed interest, though wrapped in secrecy. Military documents from Stalin's time labeled several locations in southeastern Siberia as information field instability zones. No scientific definition was given. Sites were restricted and aerial flights were rerouted. Multiple expeditions ended in silence. No accidents, no survivors, just absence. A handful of fragments survived through whispers and unofficial notes. Some chambers had acoustic properties that amplified certain frequencies. Low-frequency pulses were recorded, matching human alpha brain waves. And exposure to these environments caused hallucinations that felt like past life recall. To the Yakut and Evank, none of this was surprising. They have long said that the Earth itself remembers. The concept they speak of is called Duna, a memory that comes from the ground, not the mind. Stand in the wrong place too long, and you may dream of lives you never lived. Touch the wrong stone, and you may awaken a memory the planet itself carries. And if the Earth decides your frequency is right, you will never come back the same. A French psychologist attempted to test this legend in the 1970s. He brought 20 volunteers, all with no prior knowledge of Siberia, into one of these remote memory lands. He divided them into groups, cut off communication, and left them in silence for 3 days. When he collected their dream journals, 14 participants reported circular stone halls, lights rising from the ground, the sensation of being called by a voice that made no sound. One subject wrote, "I died, but it was like stepping out of an old coat. I wasn't afraid." These collective visions, dreams that felt like memories, were identical to those reported by shamans across centuries, which raises a terrifying question. What if Siberia is not just land? What if it is a living library, storing every epoch, every life, every consciousness that ever touched it? The stone library, if it exists, isn't just a relic. It's a mechanism, a vault of memory, designed to awaken when the right resonance passes through its walls, perhaps the hum of the earth itself, or perhaps the heartbeat of a human who has finally tuned in. The Yakut warn outsiders, to find it is not to understand it. The stone does not teach, it remembers, and when it remembers, so do you. But the story of Siberia doesn't end with memory, because memory alone is not a guardian, and what sleeps beneath the ice does not trust the world above. Beneath the snow, in the howl of the white void, the guardians wait. In the endless white of Siberia, there are moments when the wind dies and the snow seems to breathe. In that silence, people say they appear. The faceless ones, the silver beings, the keepers of the threshold. They are described the same way across centuries and across cultures, taller than any human, clad in silver or shimmering armor, faces blurred, as if hidden behind frost or light, silent, motionless, and always seen during snowstorms. No one ever forgets the first time they see one, if they live to tell it. In 19th century Siberian exploration journals, surveyors and hunters recorded fleeting encounters. A metallic figure standing in the middle of a blizzard, watching but not moving, vanishing the moment anyone took a second look. The Evank and Yakut peoples call them by many names: the ones in silver, the shining watchers, those who wait for the forgotten. They are not spirits of the dead. They are not gods. They are observers or guardians who appear when a person wanders too close to the old gates, the places where Siberia is thin. In 1956, a Soviet geological team working deep in the Verkhoyansk Mountains documented something chilling. At 2:04 a.m., During a snowstorm with temperatures at -43 degrees Celsius, their instruments recorded a sudden 5-degree rise in ambient temperature, a sourceless light moving through the fog. A metallic figure, taller than a man, gliding silently across the ice. One engineer later said, "It wasn't walking, it was sliding." The snow moved beneath it, but it left no trail. The sight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was gone, their mechanical watches stopped. Their radios buzzed with faint whispers they couldn't decipher. The report was classified and buried. Some say the silver ones are not living beings at all. They may be projections, echoes of non-physical intelligence capable of briefly materializing in the snow. The conditions must be perfect. Extreme cold, heavy storms, electromagnetic disruption in the area. When those thresholds align, the boundary between dimensions becomes thin. And in that moment, they appear, not to harm, but to check. Evank legends say, "In the season when snow breathes clouds, the people of light return. They do not speak. They only stand. If no one remembers them, they leave, taking a memory with them." Then came 1982, one of the most haunting disappearances in Siberian history. A 12-person Soviet expedition entered the Kodar Mountains to investigate unexplained frequency pulses detected by military stations. For 3 weeks, they transmitted normally. Then, radio silence. A search team arrived 10 days later and found camp intact, equipment running, no signs of a struggle, a kettle of water still warm. The last journal entry, 3:47 a.m. The light is back to the east. The echo is clearer. The rock pulse is faint. We're going deeper. If we are wrong, this may be the last. No bodies were ever found. No footprints left the site. This was not an isolated case. 1966, a group of young biologists vanished in northern Tunguska. 1973, a civilian archaeological team disappeared near Lake Labinkia. 1991, an international expedition to the Lena River never returned. No official statements were ever released. Maps were quietly redrawn. Zones were marked inaccessible due to technical conditions, a Soviet euphemism for "never go there." Researchers who risked their careers began plotting the disappearances on a map. The result? They formed lines. Those lines intersected at known magnetic anomalies. Every single site corresponded to ancient megalithic ruins, stone towers, or sealed artifact locations. The locals call these paths the roads without voices. Cross one, and you might not die. You might simply stop belonging to this world. If the faceless ones appear when someone approaches these hidden nodes, maybe they are the last warning. They don't attack. They don't speak. They just appear, and then the world changes around you. Some who returned claimed they felt like they had lived another life during the missing hours or days. Others never returned at all. Beneath all of this mystery flows the Lena River, stretching more than 4,000 kilometers across Siberia. Its icy waters may hold the last pieces of the puzzle. For centuries, the Yakut have said, people once lived in the water, not like fish, like us. Then they were gone, and the river forgot them. The Lena River, cutting through the frozen heart of Siberia, is more than just a river. It is an artery of memory, a moving mirror where the past sometimes rises, and where the last gates of a forgotten civilization may still sleep. For generations, the Yakut and Evank have whispered the same warning. Beneath the river lives a city. It does not breathe. It does not move. But sometimes the water remembers. The first signs. In the early 2000s, Russian research teams deployed sonar and subaquatic radar to map the Lena River's deeper channels. They expected to find bedrock and sediment, nothing more. But instead, they found lines. Perfectly straight lines, hundreds of meters long. Right angles beneath 40 meters of water. Terraces like stone steps, evenly spaced as if cut by a builder's hand. At first, they dismissed it as natural rock fractures. Then, in 2004, a digital 3D reconstruction revealed something impossible: a bridge. Submerged, perfectly symmetrical, nearly 300 meters long and 8 meters wide, with 90-degree edges, like an ancient stone causeway drowned by time. The sealed crossing. Geological studies showed that the stone slabs were thermally altered. The outer layers were vitrified, transformed into glass-like surfaces, a process that requires immense localized heat, like plasma or laser cutting. The surrounding sediment layers dated to 10,000 to 14,000 years ago, a time when Siberia was emerging from the last ice age, long before any civilization in recorded history could have built bridges of cut stone. And yet, there it was, silent in the water. The legends and the silence. Local legends call these cities in the water. They say lights once rose from the river, then sank when the great cold came. They speak of people who lived beneath the current, not like fish, like us. And when the Snow Age began, the river became their grave. The Yakut do not call it Atlantis. They do not call it a city. They call it simply a memory that chose to sleep. Military interest and disappearances. Soviet military archives from the 1960s to 1980s show something eerie. Multiple geophysical instability zones marked along the Lena River. Official maps labeled them inaccessible due to technical conditions. Some coincided exactly with submerged stone anomalies detected decades later. When divers attempted to explore the riverbed, several reported compass failure, sudden pressure fluctuations, nausea and disorientation, echoing sounds like a heartbeat from the riverbed. One diver's final radio transmission before blacking out: "I see steps. They're not broken. They go down and down. The stone is humming. I think something is awake here." He survived, but refused to ever speak of the incident again. The fossilized machines. Recovered fragments from the Lena and surrounding Siberian sites defy explanation. Polished metallic spheres embedded in permafrost. Micromechanical structures within fossilized alloy, showing atomic-level precision beyond modern manufacturing. Slabs of unknown metal that resonate when struck, emitting frequencies in the low alpha range, the same brainwave frequency linked to deep meditation. Some fragments are hundreds of millions of years old, based on the rock strata that encased them. Mainstream scientists call them OOPARTS, out-of-place artifacts. But quietly, some Russian researchers admitted these objects were not forged by nature, and they were not forged by humans. The network reveals itself. As the mapping of Siberia's anomalies expanded, a pattern emerged. Yakutia, metal domes and buried electromagnetic structures. Tunguska, explosions without impact, tree rings showing lasting damage. Lake Baikal, submerged pyramids and fast-moving unknown creatures. Putarana and Tanu Ola, towering stone pillars emitting low-frequency signals. Alai Mountains, hollow tunnels and resonant underground chambers. the Lena River. Submerged bridge, terraces, and vitrified stone blocks. When researchers connected the points, they formed a geometric lattice, a network of energy nodes like arteries of a living planet, or the skeleton of a forgotten machine. This wasn't a random scattering of ruins. This was design, the terrifying implication. If Siberia is a sleeping network, then the Lena River may be its central artery, a final node that connects the subterranean tunnels of Alai, the stone towers of Tanu Ola, the metal domes of the Valley of Death, the electromagnetic pulses that still hum in Yakutia. If it was once a machine, it may still be alive. The unspoken fear. Military interest in these anomalies has never waned. Declassified notes show a recurring phrase: do not activate, maintain deep freeze, which leads to the chilling conclusion. What if the ice is not just a climate phenomenon? What if it is the last layer of protection, a seal placed to keep the system dormant? Because if it awakens, we will not just be discovering history, we will be meeting its architects. The faceless ones, the silver watchers, the humming tunnels, the submerged bridges. They are all pieces of a puzzle larger than our species. And as the permafrost melts, as magnetic anomalies rise, and as modern exploration digs deeper, the puzzle begins to complete itself. But the final question lingers, cold and quiet. If Siberia remembers, what will it remember us as? Deep in the unmapped wilderness of Siberia, there is a place that appears on no official charts. The Yakut and Evank have a name for it, whispered only in stories. The land where stone remembers. It is not marked with monuments. It has no temples, no roads, no visible ruins, but the ground itself feels alive. Stand there long enough, and the earth begins to speak. The first discovery. In the late 19th century, a team of Russian miners near Kutsk accidentally broke into a circular chamber. While excavating ancient limestone formations, what they found changed their lives forever. A perfect stone cylinder, 30 meters across, smooth walls lined with stacked slabs like shelves carved by an invisible hand, no organic remains, no signs of fire or tools, and in the center, a single black stone, polished, seamless, so dark that light seemed to bend around it. The miners reported strange sensations, vertigo and nausea, sudden emotional shifts. Some wept uncontrollably, disorientation, like forgetting their own names. One miner, trembling, said, "The stone was looking at me, but it had no eyes." The site was quietly sealed. Its coordinates were erased from maps, where stone reads and ice remembers. From that day, rumors spread in Europe's occult circles. They spoke of a stone library, a vault of memory where history wasn't written in books, but encoded in resonance. Waves, frequencies, vibrations stored in matter itself. The Siberian shamans have always said the same. The earth remembers. And when the right soul arrives, the memory will awaken. The Soviet silence. During the Stalin era, several expeditions sought the buried library. Some returned empty-handed. Others never returned at all. Declassified military archives contain a haunting pattern. Sites marked information field instability. Expeditions terminated without explanation. Equipment recovered with damaged electronics and erased recordings. One file from 1952, barely legible, includes the line, "Prolonged exposure to the black stone induces non-linear memory events, subjects experience temporal displacement of consciousness. In simpler terms, they saw lives that were not their own, the experiments. In 1979, a secret team of geophysicists conducted an unauthorized study of one such site. They brought EEG machines, electromagnetic sensors, infrared cameras. Their observations defied explanation. Brainwaves of researchers synchronized when near the black stone. Low-frequency pulses emanated from the chamber walls. Light bent unnaturally around the central stone, creating phantom shadows. One scientist wrote in his journal, "We are not discovering, we are remembering. This place already knows us." Days later, the site was sealed under military supervision. All equipment was confiscated. Reports were classified for 100 years. The memory effect. Modern accounts from those who have approached the forbidden zones describe the same phenomena. Recurring dreams of circular stone halls, visions of lightless corridors, a sensation of having lived multiple lives. A French psychologist once brought 20 volunteers to the outer region of one such site, with no prior knowledge of the legend. Within 3 days, 14 participants reported dreams of spiral chambers. 11 drew similar symbols, circles, grids, and radiating lines. 5 wept upon waking, feeling homesick for a place they couldn't name. This is what the Evank call Duna. Memory that comes from the earth. Not yours, not mine, older. The purpose of the library. If these memory vaults are real, what are they storing? Scholars, mystics, and fringe physicists have offered 3 possibilities. A chronicle of a lost civilization, encoded not in language, but in resonant geometry and vibration. A planetary backup system, a living record to restart knowledge. If a global cataclysm wipes out humanity, a dimensional beacon, a signal to non-human intelligence, guiding them back to their own work. The indigenous belief is simpler. They built the memory to survive themselves, and the ice is the lock, the waiting stone. Today, the black stones remain buried, and the libraries of Siberia stay silent. But as climate change melts the permafrost, as magnetic anomalies grow stronger, and as human curiosity drills deeper, the silence may not last. And when the earth remembers everything, what will it show us first? The truth of what came before us, or the reason it had to be buried? The buried library is only one node in the greater Siberian network, a living archive that spans tunnels, rivers, towers, and mountains. But the most chilling part is still ahead, because where memory lives, something must guard it. And the Silver Watchers, the faceless ones, may not just be legends, they may be librarians. In the coldest corners of Siberia, when the sky turns white and the snow moves like a living wall, some claim to see beings that do not belong to this world. The Evank and Yakut call them the faceless ones. The ones in silver, keepers of the threshold, witness accounts through time. From the 19th century to modern-day expeditions, their descriptions remain eerily consistent, taller than any human, clad in armor or fabric that glints like metal, faces undefined like fog or blank light, always seen in the heart of a snowstorm. Always motionless until they vanish without a trace. One 1892 surveyor wrote in his journal, "I saw a man of steel, but when I blinked, he was gone. Only the wind remembered him." The 1956 storm encounter, a Soviet geological team in the Verkhoyansk Mountains. recorded one of the most chilling events on file. At 2 a.m., amid minus 50 degrees Celsius temperatures, the instruments detected a sudden 5-degree Celsius rise in the heart of the blizzard. A metallic form appeared in the fog, gliding across the snow. The team's mechanical watches stopped simultaneously. As the figure vanished, silence fell, and every compass needle spun without direction. The report was classified immediately, but one engineer confessed in private, "It didn't walk, it floated, and for the first time in my life, I felt the snow was watching me." The disappearances. The Silver Ones are not known to attack, but where they appear, people vanish. 1966. A group of biologists disappeared in northern Tunguska. 1973. A civilian archaeological team vanished near Lake Labinkir. 1982. The Kodar Mountain Incident. 12 Soviet researchers went silent. Search teams found camps intact, kettles still warm, no footprints leaving the site. A final journal entry. The light is back. The echo is louder. If we are wrong, this may be the last. No bodies, no graves, only a suffocating silence. Locals have one explanation. The land kept them. The lines of power. When researchers plotted every disappearance, a shocking pattern emerged: magnetic anomalies, stone towers in Tanu Ola, submerged bridges in the Lena River, buried memory chambers, all aligned perfectly, like nodes of a forgotten grid. In the spaces between these lines, Soviet maps quietly marked inaccessible technical conditions. No explanation, no entry permitted. Who are the Silver Ones? Several theories try to explain them. Guardians of the ancient grid, not alive in a human sense. Manifestations of non-human intelligence, activated when intruders approach forbidden sites. Dimensional echoes, holographic projections of a past civilization. Appear during snowstorms because magnetic interference thins the boundary between realities. The librarians, connected to the stone libraries and tunnels, not here to harm, but to verify if humans are ready to remember. The Evank say it's simplest. They are not coming. They are checking if we still remember them. The Lena River's hidden city. Many sightings of the Faceless Ones cluster around the upper reaches of the Lena River. Beneath its frozen depths, sonar and radar imaging have revealed terraced stone blocks, perfectly symmetrical columns, a 300-meter-long submerged bridge with crisp 90-degree edges. Sediment dating places it at 10,000 to 14,000 years old, a time when no known civilization could have built it. Some stone samples show thermal vitrification, laser-like cuts, polished surfaces impervious to erosion. Locals call these ruins the cities in the water. They say the Silver Ones walk the ice above them during storms, as if guarding something still active far below. The threshold. The Faceless Ones may not be soldiers. They may be signals, manifestations of a system older than humanity, designed to monitor trespassers near the ancient grid. Those who cross the threshold don't always die. Some vanish, some return, changed. Eyes that no longer focus, voices that speak in dreams, and the deep, silent knowledge that the world we see is only the surface. If the Silver Ones are the guardians, then the next discovery brings us to what they have been protecting all along. The final link in the Siberian network, the black vaults buried beneath the Lena and the Alai Mountains, where the first intelligence may have left behind its last message for the next species to rise. Beneath the ice and stone of Siberia, past the snowstorms where the silver ones stand, lies a world that was never meant for human eyes. The indigenous Evank and Yakut whisper of it only in fragments, a place where stone can read and ice can remember. A library that is not built to teach, but to hide. Soviet geophysical maps marked these regions with cryptic labels. Information, field instability. No official explanation. No follow-up reports. The first discovery. In the late 19th century, miners near Irkutsk uncovered something impossible. Perfectly symmetrical chambers. Walls lined with stacked stone slabs, like a library without books. At the center, a black, glass-smooth monolith. The stone reflected light incorrectly. Shadows bent. Eyes ached. Some miners wept, without knowing why. When a team of scientists arrived weeks later, they noted nausea, disorientation, and memory lapses. Near the chamber was sealed. All maps were revised. The site was erased from public record. The stone that thinks. Those who saw the black stone describe it as not an object, but an eye. It absorbed light without reflection. It bent perception around it. It pulsed, faintly, almost like a heartbeat. When geologists placed sensitive instruments nearby, they picked up low-frequency vibrations, patterns that resembled human brainwaves. Some fringe researchers suggested, the stone isn't dead, it's waiting for someone to understand it. The hidden network. Over the decades, more black vaults were quietly located. One beneath Tanu Ola, near the stone antennas. Another in the Alai Mountains, linked to the tunnel network. A submerged vault beneath the Lena River, directly below the ancient stone bridge. Every site shared three traits: geometric precision, corridors, and chambers, aligned to cosmic and magnetic axes, energy fields, measurable low-frequency pulses, psychological effects, disorientation, memory flashes, and in some cases, shared hallucinations. When plotted on a map, these vaults formed lines and spirals as if part of a planetary circuit. The message, buried in time. A declassified Soviet note from 1983 contains a single, chilling statement. These are not ruins. These are memories of the Earth itself. Some scientists believe the black vaults are not storage for physical artifacts, but for information embedded in resonance. Encoded frequencies, vibrational memory, emotional signatures of an extinct intelligence, like a planetary hard drive, but alive and aware of the observer. The Guardians and the Test. The silver ones are seen most often. Near the black vault sites. What if they are not visitors, but projections of the vaults themselves? Sentinels of energy, manifesting when human presence disturbs the memory field. Faceless because they are echoes, not entities in the physical sense. Silent because the vaults communicate without language. Those who enter uninvited are said to vanish or return changed. The land does not kill. It keeps what it chooses. Evank Elder. The last unopened door. Satellite imaging and seismic scans indicate the largest black vault lies beneath the Putarana Plateau, sealed by basalt columns and frozen magnetic fields. A hidden chamber, estimated to be 300 meters across, resonates at 7.83 Hz, the same frequency as the Earth's Schumann resonance. Some believe this is no coincidence. It is a heartbeat, a signal waiting for alignment. If opened, the vault may not reveal artifacts, but something far more profound: memory of a species before us. Knowledge that cannot be written, a map of what humanity forgot, on its way to becoming human. The question that remains: who built the vaults? An ancient human offshoot, now extinct or ascended, the Denisovans, leaving behind resonant architecture, or a non-human intelligence, biological or interdimensional, that once used Earth as a memory field? Whatever the answer, Siberia holds it in silence. The awakening. As the ice melts, as the permafrost cracks, as the magnetic anomalies intensify, we approach a threshold. The stone libraries hum again. The tunnels resonate. The silver ones appear more frequently. Perhaps the vaults are preparing to open, not with keys, but with recognition. Because the final question was never, who were they? It was always, what part of ourselves did we leave behind, waiting for the ice to remember? This concludes the rewritten cinematic script from all 6 original parts. Fully professional, hook, line, sinker style, ready for 11 Labs narration.